Are you prepared? I know you prepared your house. I know you prepared your income. I know you prepared your marriage, your children. You planned out your whole life. But you've made no plans whatsoever for where you're headed when you leave this world. Hell is a place. It is a place that existed before you were ever born. It is there, it's going to be there, and there's nothing you can do to change that one bit whatsoever. It doesn't make any difference if the churches today have stopped preaching on hell, if the preachers don't preach on hell, if the seminaries and Bible colleges don't teach the young men about hell, if they extricate it from the Bible. It makes no difference whatsoever. It is still a place that you must deal with one day.
Hundreds of thousands of dead fish washing up on shore along the Delaware Bay from middle to lower townships. And this is no joke. This could be the most enormous heat-related death ever at the Jersey Shore.
The state of Arkansas, birds falling out of the sky, the result of some sort of trauma, and fish found dead in the water, thousands of them in separate incidents in the same state.
They rained down on a small Arkansas town like a scene from a horror movie. Thousands of dead blackbirds on front lawns, and so many in the street, drivers could barely avoid them.
Went out to get the paper, and I looked and I said, wait a minute, what is this? And there were birds all over. We probably had 14 or 15 just in the front yard.
As many as 5,000 bird carcasses littered across a 1-mile radius after dropping from the sky on New Year's Eve.
I thought the mayor was messing with me when he called me. He got me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and told me he had birds falling out of the sky.
The dead drumfish are now littering a 20-mile section of the Arkansas River near Ozark.
And adding to the mystery, a massive fish kill also here in Arkansas, just one day earlier.
As many as 100,000 drumfish dead along a 20-mile stretch of the Arkansas River. It's 100 miles from the dead birds, but the internet was ripe with conspiracy theories. One Twitter user writing, 5,000 dead birds, now 100,000 dead fish. Definitely an alien invasion happening in Arkansas. The experts call it coincidence.
Extremely unusual. Having two events like this at practically the same time, we don't think that there's any connection whatsoever.
Too alarming. Some have called biblical type events that have many residents wondering what's next.
Back now to our top story, a terrible mystery gripping the world right now. Birds, fish, and all kinds of creatures just dropping dead in huge numbers for what seems like no reason. Just in the last 2 weeks, the theories and speculation running rampant.
Hundreds of dead seals in Labrador. These seals washed up around Hopedale. There are similar reports from other communities. No one knows why these animals died.
Andrews County Humane Society is investigating the death of 200 cows.
The cattle were discovered on a farm field on 4th Street in Amherst. Today, the bodies were taken out in semi-loads to be disposed of. The Portage County Sheriff's Department says the animals died.
They've occurred suddenly with devastating results. A series of huge fish kills, the latest involving 2 million fish in Maryland.
On Kent Island, Maryland, along the Chesapeake Bay. Wildlife officials say roughly 2 million of one particular species died very suddenly. But this came at about the same time that thousands of birds died suddenly in Arkansas and Louisiana, and millions of fish were killed in separate incidents from Arkansas to South America to the South Pacific.
This is all a sign of the apocalypse. Authorities in northern Italy say more than 1,000 turtle doves have dropped dead over the past 5 days. It's the latest in a series of unexplained sudden death incidents affecting creatures in the sky and underwater. The events have sparked a media frenzy, with doomsday speculators saying it hails the end of the world. 8,000 dead turtle doves in Italy, hundreds of birds dead in Rockwell, Texas, 500 red-winged blackbirds in Louisiana, 100 birds in Sweden, 3,000 dead red-winged blackbirds in Arkansas, several hundred dead in Kentucky. On the fish, several hundred snapper fish in New Zealand, thousands of dead fish in Florida, 40,000 devil crabs in the UK, 80,000 drumfish in Arkansas, 2 million spotted croakers in Maryland. In the last 2 weeks,
Thousands of
fish are dead at the mouth of a shipping channel, as well as a dead whale that was reported in Venice today. The species include crabs, stingrays, eel, drum, speckled trouts, and redfish.
In the UK, 40,000 velvet crabs littered the coast. Brazil, 100 tons of lifeless fish floated. And in Sweden, jackdaws fell in the dead of the night. Across the world, the bizarre phenomena of creatures raining down or washing up on shore has mystified scientists.
The video you're about to see is not a gravel road. Those are the dead fish.
This footage that was taken recently was in Rio de Janeiro, I believe, or Santa Cruz, South America. I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but all over the world things are changing. We're talking about environmentally, the weather-related changes may have an effect. Look at all these dead animals, these dead fish. This is in Bolivia, South America. Alligators dead everywhere. Whatever was in the water is coming up dead. This is happening all over the place. It's happening in the United States. It's happening in South America. What is going on? I've got footage of other things happening in the Middle East on some of the beaches where there's just millions and millions of seashells that are just washing up. The dead animals that live within the shells are somehow just washing up on shore. All you see is an ocean of just dead.
200 dead cows in Wisconsin and 7,000 dead buffalo in Vietnam. What is happening?
I think the media is, by and large, not blowing it out of proportion. They're actually underestimating how serious it is.
The bodies of more than 300 wild reindeer were found scattered across a small area in central Norway, and officials believe they were all killed in a single lightning storm. A spokesman for the Norwegian Nature Inspectorate told local media he discovered the carcasses during a routine inspection of a remote hunting area last week. He told the local, "We've heard about animals being struck by lightning and killed, but I don't remember hearing about lightning killing animals on this scale before." The Norwegian Environment Agency said in a press release at least 70 of the reindeer were calves, and 5 of the animals had to be euthanized. Officials believe they say the death toll was so high because the reindeer may have been huddled together out of fear during the storm, which isn't an uncommon thing for animals to do during bad weather. Back in 2014, a single lightning bolt killed 45 head of cattle on a ranch in Montana after they tried to take cover under some trees. And 21 head of cattle in South Dakota were found dead in May after a lightning bolt struck the metal feeder they had crowded around during a storm. Norwegian Nature Inspectorate officials collected samples from the reindeer's bodies to determine exactly how they died. It's unclear if they were killed by a single lightning bolt or by multiple strikes.
Now, a story we first told you about yesterday. The Mobile Bay mystery continues. Dozens of sharks that washed up on the western shore of Mobile Bay are gone today, but folks are still wondering what brought them there. And it was a mystery this morning when several residents living close to Dolphin Island Parkway on Mobile Bay woke to find about 100 dead black-tipped sharks on the beach. Their cause of death is unknown, and how they got there is unknown. News 5 photojournalist Clinton Bourgeois was at the scene and has this report.
Now you guys are going to have to show me how to eat the crab.
The smell of fresh boiled seafood. That's what Sabrina Rios was looking forward to during her Mobile vacation.
Good.
But early this morning, another not-so-savory smell began to fill the air.
We kept smelling this awful smell like every time a gust of wind would come.
The source of the smell shocked them.
So we checked the beach next door, and where we found it was just lined with sharks.
Just a lot of dead fish gone to waste. Very
upsetting.
The green ooze seen from above Florida's coast prompted a state of emergency. The severe algae bloom on the St. Lucie River responsible for shutting down several beaches in South Florida just before the busy 4th of July weekend.
I'm trying to breathe in that.
Dramatic footage caught on cell phone camera shows manatees struggling to move through the thick slime.
Just want some clean water.
Good Samaritans do their best to rinse the manatee off, fighting to breathe.
Just watch your head.
Okay. Senator Bill Nelson wanting to get a look for himself.
Look, folks, here it is. 100% horror.
Captain Rufus Wakeman says the thick cover on top of the water is hurting his fishing business. He's unable to rely on the river.
Oh, it's bad. It's all bad. You know, our way of life here in Stuart, Florida is dictated by the river. We have a lot of people who enjoy our waterways, and without good, clean water, they can't. When you show up at a boat ramp and you got a high bacteria sign there,
Chinese authorities are investigating thousands of dead fish in a river near the site of the recent chemical explosion in Tianjin. And while this disaster occurs away from home, US scientists have started an investigation of their own as to why dozens of large whales are washing up dead on the shores of Alaska. 30 large whales in total since May. And the National Oceanic and Atmosphere Administration has declared the string of large whale deaths around Alaska as an unusual mortality event and are racing to find out why.
Over 40 grackles found dead or lethargic near Upham's Corner. Residents first saw them this morning.
I tried to, move them a little bit, and they just seemed like it was on one side, and you put them on their feet, and they just fell. Almost like it was like, one side was like paralyzed.
No other species of birds were affected, only the grackles, which are only around here in the summer. So the Animal Rescue League of Boston and inspectional services were trying to figure it all out.
So we're not sure what's going on, if there's an environmental toxin or if there's something that's some disease that's being spread around the birds.
There was no sign of people feeding birds and no sign of poison. So right now, it's a big mystery.
Tonight, dead ducks at a popular park in Aurora. Neighbors called us after they weren't getting answers from the city. CBS 4's Melissa Garcia live at Expo Park, which is near Exposition and Havana. And Melissa, do we know yet what's killing the ducks?
Karen, that for right now is a mystery. City officials don't know if maybe it's a disease that's being spread from one bird to another, or if it's something else that could be causing them to be sick. But people who we talk to who live in the area, well, they say they are repulsed by this park's condition.
Huge numbers of fish have washed ashore in the Hatton, Quảng Bình, Quảng Trị, and Thừa Thiên Huế provinces. The dead fish have been washing up on beaches along the country's central coast, include a rare species that live far offshore in the deep waters.
A monster typhoon has just slammed into the coast of China tonight. Typhoon Meranti, at one point among the strongest on record, winds of 190 miles an hour. Already causing major flooding and damage in Taiwan, water breaching the seawall of the port, tossing shipping containers like toys there. And our chief foreign correspondent Terry Moran with the stunning images coming in right now.
The super typhoon was packing some of the strongest sustained winds on record, 190 miles per hour at its height. A wall of water lashed this fishing port, boats pitching in the seas as Typhoon Meranti passed directly over Taiwan early Wednesday. These ships crashed into each other, one almost entirely on its side. A motorist struck by a piece of flying debris. Blinding rain and wind down power lines, crushing this car, toppling trucks, sending these shipping containers tumbling. Reports of over 25 inches of rain in 24 hours left streets flooded and mudslides blocking roads.
Tonight, this storm is slamming into densely populated eastern China, still packing winds the equivalent of a Category 3 hurricane. And there's another typhoon coming just behind it.
A disturbing sight in the capital city of Bangladesh. The country is celebrating an Islamic holiday with mass animal sacrifices. Now the city streets have been turned into rivers of blood. The Islamic festival is considered the Feast of Sacrifice. Muslims slaughter animals to honor Abraham. Residents have been using parking lots, garages, and alleys to kill the animals, and heavy rains have washed all the blood into the street.
underway tonight after a record 5.6 magnitude quake near Pawnee rattled, rumbled, and shook Oklahoma and 6 other states. This evening, Governor Mary Fallin declared a state of emergency in Pawnee County because of this morning's quake.
There was no thoughts. I mean, all I could do was just stand there and hold on to the counter.
Besides seeing and hearing merchandise fall off the shelves like this soda bottle here, the 2 employees here also saw and heard debris falling from the ceiling, like these ceiling tiles, this insulation, even some lettering that came off their wall.
I said, is this the end? Is Jesus coming back?
But first, our top story this morning. Tropical storm Hermine is barreling up the East Coast. It's bringing extremely dangerous storm surges, flash flooding, and high winds to millions of people, not to mention disrupting Labor Day holiday plans. This morning, the storm is 55 miles off Cape Lookout, North Carolina, moving northeast at about 21 miles per hour.
Tropical storm watches and warnings are posted from North Carolina all the way to Rhode Island. At least 1 tornado was reported in Hatteras, North Carolina. Here's a look at some of the damage the storm caused just hours ago. High winds toppling a tree in Carthage, North Carolina, about a 3-hour drive from the coast. Earlier, Hermine cut a path of damage through Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. Tens of thousands of people are without electricity, and emergency declarations are in effect in 6 states.
Earthquake struck the northwest of the state of Washington on Tuesday night. The quake briefly shook homes and rattled residents. The USGS said the quake hit the Sudden Valley area at 11:50 p.m. local time. A CBS affiliate reported the earthquake woke people in Bellingham, Washington, which sits about 10 miles to the west. Adrian Williamson told the Seattle station it was loud, like something slammed the house. Both cats flew off their beds. Others told the station that the tremor lasted for about 5 seconds and was pretty violent.
Begin with this breaking news. Earthquakes with magnitude of 5.1 and 5.8 on the Richter scale jolted Korea's southeastern region today, just an hour earlier. Mind you, Korea is not too prone to earthquakes. This is the strongest quake to rattle the nation's inland since the country started collecting data in 1978. Our very own Hwang Ho-jun is on the ground in Gyeongju, the epicenter of the quake. He's live on the phone with us. Ho-jun, the quakes tonight, we could even feel it. I feel a tremor 350 kilometers away here in the nation's capital, Seoul. What can you tell us?
Kwon-young, we have so far felt 2 tremors here in Gyeongju. The initial 5.1 earthquake was detected at 7:44 p.m. to be followed by a very strong aftershock measuring 5.8 on the Richter scale about 50 minutes later at 8:32 p.m. Korea time. The second one was big enough to be felt all across South Korea. Tables and chairs fell over as buildings shook quite a lot. The residents here, including our crew and myself, ran out to the streets for open air. The Korean Meteorological Administration announced that the epicenter was near Nenamyeon region here in Gyeongju.
To Tanzania, where authorities are still assessing the damage from the earthquake. At least 20 people have been killed and more than 250 injured. The northwestern town of Bukoba is close to the quake's epicenter. Our correspondent Dan Ashby has this report.
Well, you can see for your own eyes the scale of the destruction. Parts of buildings have come down. There are bricks on the floor. In effect, this is a street which has just come down on itself. And this is just part of the more than 900 buildings which have wholly or partially collapsed here. That, of course, has taken a terrible toll. In this neighborhood alone, 9 people were killed, and the Red Cross believes that 20 died in total. Bukoba is effectively a town in mourning. Families here have already started burying their relatives, and politicians say this is the worst thing to have happened here in more than 20 years.
All new at 11, incredible video tonight. A massive sinkhole has opened at the Mosaic's new Wells facility in Mulberry. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Wendy Ryan.
And I'm Jamison Jeweler. Tonight there are reports of millions of gallons of contaminated water now flowing into the Florida aquifer.
ABC Action News reporter Cameron Polum live at the plant with the very latest. Cameron?
That's right, guys. We're at the entrance of this facility. The sinkhole is under a stack about 3 miles south of where we are right now. Officials tell us at this point about 215 million gallons of contaminated water have been released into the aquifer. Tonight, crews at the new Wales Mosaic plant scrambling to stop the contaminated and radioactive water that's seeping into the Florida aquifer. Officials found the massive sinkhole in late August in a containment pond near one of the gypsum stacks.
One of our
field technicians whose job is to monitor water levels in the ponds. When they were making their rounds, they identified that there was a water level drop.
Workers drained the ponds and found this, a 45-foot hole so deep they couldn't see a bottom. The company says so far about 215 million gallons of contaminated water used to process fertilizer has drained into the hole.
We activated a recovery well so that we can capture any water that has gone down the hole.
Mosaic says that recovery well is engineered to pull contaminated water out of the aquifer and back into the plant. Now, each one of those ponds sits on top of a liner that keeps that contaminated water from entering the ground. However, we're told the sinkhole collapsed that liner, sending water gushing below.
The aftermath of devastating mudslides in Guatemala. Emergency workers and local residents dig for survivors after 9 people were killed. The night before, the bodies of the victims were recovered. The concrete houses with their corrugated iron roofs in this poor neighborhood were turned to rubble. Emilio Vega lost his wife in the mudslide, and his son is still missing.
I told my wife, we have to wait for the rain to pass, and then we'll leave. But she was worried about the house, that it was going to get flooded. Leave everything, I told her.
The mudslides were triggered by heavy rains, and a spokesman for the National Emergency Service blamed a poor drainage system for the tragedy. Last year, Guatemala had one of its worst ever natural disasters when nearly 300 people were killed in a mudslide.
Authorities are blaming arson for 3 fires in southeastern Spain that have forced more than 1,000 residents and tourists from their homes and hotels. The blazes near Costa Blanca broke out Sunday. More than 800 acres of land has been burnt. The fire here in Bolulla continues to rage out of control, but firefighters say they have stabilized outbreaks in 2 eastern towns, like Javia. These German tourists say they were forced out of their holiday apartments.
I can say it's horrible, it's tragical, and I hope that rain will come.
Firefighters hope for the same, although high temperatures are in the forecast, challenging their efforts to fully contain the blaze.
Breaking news tonight, a new Northern California wildfire threatening hundreds of homes and forcing people out. Firefighters fighting the flames from the ground and the air. Good evening, I'm Brian Hackney.
And I'm Juliette Goodrich. The flames have ripped through nearly 600 acres in Lake County. The fire is just 15% contained, and there are reports at least 200 structures are threatened. Mandatory evacuations are in place in parts of Lower Lake. Massive plumes of smoke are filling the sky right now. More than 200 firefighters are attacking flames from the ground and air. The heavy brush has made it difficult for crews to get to the fire. Now here's a closer look at the area. The fire broke out just before 5 o'clock near Highway 29 in Lower Lake, just south of Clear Lake. Roads in the area are shut down. An evacuation center has been set up at Highland Senior Center in Clear Lake.
And that is just one of several fires burning in our state. Tomorrow, a stretch of Highway 1 near Big Sur will be shut down because of the wildfire burning in Monterey County. The closure starts at 2 tomorrow afternoon. It could last for up to 24 hours. The Soberanos fire has scorched about 72,000 acres over the past 3 weeks.
Rain and storms turned deadly in Dutchess County. 5 people yesterday were sent to the hospital after getting struck by lightning at a Poughkeepsie park. One of them has died.
Earlier this week, 2 more people were struck by lightning in another town in upstate New York. They were found dead under a tree in a cemetery on Wednesday. The toxicology report on the official cause of death is still pending. The National Weather Service says an average of 31 people per year have died in lightning strikes in the U.S. over the past 10 years. So far, at least 26 people have been killed by lightning this year.
The central Italian province of Perugia was hit with a 6.2 magnitude earthquake during the middle of the night Wednesday. The U.S. Geological Survey reported that it could be felt in Rome, nearly 70 miles away. Several aftershocks, one of magnitude 5.4, were recorded in the hour following the initial quake. Buildings collapsed in nearby towns.
That at least 14 people, including children, are believed to have been killed. The worst affected towns are Accumoli, Amatrice, Posta, and Aquata del Tronto. The quake struck at 1:36 a.m. GMT. The U.S. Geological Survey issued a red alert, which means extensive damage is likely.
Dozens are dead and scores more are missing after an earthquake damaged towns in central Italy. The 6.2 magnitude earthquake that hit the region Wednesday was shallow at about 6 miles underground, causing more damage than a deep quake. The mayor of Amatrice, one of the towns affected, said half the town no longer exists.
Just in, an earthquake of 6.7 has hit Myanmar, and the tremors of that earthquake have been felt in the northeast area and in West Bengal and in Bihar too. The tremors were felt in Kolkata and its adjoining areas and were also felt in Bihar and Tirupur. Meanwhile, the epicenter of this earthquake was in Myanmar, and the earthquake was calculated at of 6.7 on the Richter scale. Till now, the details are still awaited.
This week in Keensburg, New Jersey, hundreds and hundreds of dead fish floated into the marina. Bob Considine of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection stated, "We're talking hundreds of thousands of fish, if not millions of fish."
Deadly floods. Maryland's governor has declared a state of emergency after a devastating storm tore through Ellicott City, killing at least 2 people. ABC's Gio Benitez is on the scene in Ellicott City. Good morning, Gio.
George, good morning to you. Just take a look at this unbelievable sight. The floodwaters just tearing up these streets. This neighborhood is historic. It's been here since the Revolutionary War in the 1700s, and now it's destroyed. Deadly flash floods devastating Ellicott City, Maryland, killing 2 people. Making for mayhem on Main Street in the Baltimore suburb. Watch as this man tries to save a woman trapped in her submerged car. First swept away by rushing waters, only to fight his way upstream to help form a human chain. The woman crawling out of her car window and finally pulled to safety.
He was washed down the street, and I thought he was gone. It was unbelievable.
This just one of at least 120 water rescues after more than 6 inches of rain fell in just a few hours, causing the Patapsco River to quickly rise to 13 feet, engulfing everything in its path.
There's people in the water!
Watch as these people are left clinging on to their swept-away car.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Cars carried by Saturday's historic flood littering Main Street.
It was like a raging river.
Total devastation left in the raging river's wake. These storefronts gutted, sidewalks reduced to rubble. Overnight, the same disastrous storm system causing more flooding in New Jersey and severe thunderstorms in North Carolina.
5-year-old boy hit by lightning, CPR in progress.
Where lightning struck and took the life of a 5-year-old boy. And back out here live in Maryland, you can see one of those cars we were talking about, the floodwaters just taking it away. By the way, scientists tell us there is a 0.1% chance of this kind of rain event ever happening. And clearly here in Maryland, it did, George.
Wow, 0.1%. Okay, Gio, thanks very much. Let's go to Ginger now and where this is all heading.
Yeah, where it's all heading is right back in the same region, so I'll get to that. But it wasn't just Maryland. Look at this picture from New Jersey. You have those water rescues ongoing, and now that's my problem, right? You've got all these areas that have had more than 6-7 inches of rain. Newark, Delaware, up there in central and western New Jersey, and right back into parts of Maryland. The ground is just so saturated.
News with the drought in Worcester. Today, the city declared it was in a stage 3 emergency, and you can tell the sad state of affairs by this reservoir. The area should be completely underwater. The water level there, 20 feet lower than normal. Live team coverage for this on this tonight. WBZ's Jim Smith kicks us off tonight in Worcester.
And Jim, we know the city's taking some pretty dramatic steps to conserve water at this point, and that's even going to affect people just as they're dining out.
That is true, Liam and Paula. In fact, at City of Worcester restaurants, you don't get tap water automatically. If you ask for it, only then will you get it. And here in the park behind City Hall, you can see that the fountain is actually turned off. It's all a result of this terrible drought. Tae Dong fills his watering can and gives his parched flowers a drink. He's required to hand water with a container, not allowed to use the hose. All part of new water restrictions just ordered by the City of Worcester.
Pretty tough because if I don't water, it's going to die, you know. So I have to water like twice a week.
This is Quinnipoxet Reservoir in Holden, a major part of Worcester's water supply. It is now bone dry in many areas, visible sections of land that would usually be underwater.
We're really hoping to get a 20% reduction in use of water to try to conserve the really small amount of water that we have left. And the prospects of the next 90 days is for very little precipitation.
Worcester restaurants like the Boynton are now required to stop serving tap water to customers unless they ask for it.
Shouldn't just give the water to the customer, just assume it. But if they ask for tap water, we obviously give it to them.
Vehicle washing is now restricted to commercial car washes. The new restrictions are a result of the incredible drought we're all experiencing. The city manager says when reservoirs are this low, it's an emergency.
It's probably the most kind of essential resource that we have.
Back here live in Worcester, there you see the sign. These are strange times indeed.
A prolonged drought in Croatia is threatening this year's olive crop. In Vodnjan, which lies in the heart of the country's olive-growing region, it's not rained for months, and the olives are shriveling on the trees. Local growers fear the worst. I saw the long-term weather forecast, which says there will be no rain this month, which could result in the complete destruction of the crop. The fruits are already dropping off the trees. I've seen it happening. The lack of rain means the olives have failed to develop any pulp, which provides the oil. Some growers do have irrigation systems, but repeated watering costs a fortune. Most are just hoping for a change in the weather.
Heavy flooding continues in northeastern India. The rivers have reached dangerously high levels after heavy rainfall, leaving many homes and buildings submerged. People have been forced to wade through the floodwater to reach higher land. There's also been a rise in waterborne illnesses.
We are facing a lot of problems. Everything has been submerged in river. There is no arrangement for food, drinking water or boats. We don't know what to do.
Water has been gushing in the area since the last 3 days. All the land has been flooded with water. All the crops were damaged. Water has started entering our homes.
Following days of rain and no let-up Saturday, Louisiana is operating under a state of emergency.
As of right now, well over 1,000 people rescued, not just from their homes, but from their vehicles. Some people not even from their vehicles. They've been clinging to trees and other things like this in swift-moving floodwaters.
Our number one public safety message is to tell people to stay home. If you don't need to be out, if you're high and dry in a safe place, stay there.
The National Weather Service says starting Friday, 6 to 10 inches of rain fell on parts of Louisiana, with perhaps another 4 to 6 inches possible by Saturday afternoon. The heavy rains and flooding forced Governor Edwards and his family out of the governor's mansion, a first, he said, while many others are spending the weekend in shelters.
We tried out the back door, there were spiders, and then we tried out the kitchen, there was a snake. So then we fought through that and then finally got in the car.
Mississippi and Alabama have also been struggling with heavy rainfall, and as the storm system continues to move slowly to the west, a flood watch for southwest Louisiana is in effect until Sunday afternoon.
A dangerous new wildfire in Southern California has exploded in size and now affects more than 80,000 people. The Blue Cut Fire covers around 18,000 acres east of Los Angeles. A portion of the main highway from L.A. to Las Vegas is closed.
More than 80,000 people are under evacuation orders right now. Flames destroyed entire neighborhoods. Some firefighters have been injured. The fire is 0% contained. Carter Evans is in Phelan. That's about 45 miles from Los Angeles, where the governor has declared a state of emergency. Carter, good morning.
Good morning. We've seen home after home like these just burned to the ground. Now, this fire started around 10:30 yesterday morning, and we watched it explode to about 9,000 acres by sundown. Well, the battle continued through the night, and it's far from over.
God wants us to know the season because Jesus is returning in wrath, and God does not wish that any should perish. First, the signs of nature and the weather. Jesus said, and there will be great earthquakes, and in various places plagues and famines, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven. Jesus added that these signs would be like birth pains. That means that the closer we get to his return, the signs will increase in two ways. They will become more frequent and more intense, like birth pains. More frequent, more intense. More frequent earthquakes, more intense. More tornadoes, more intense.
Scientists are growing increasingly concerned.
We have seen changes in extremes of weather. The current changes are very unusual and cannot be explained simply as part of any natural cycle. In the last century, our climate has started to change rapidly. This isn't thought to be just a temporary blip in the system. The evidence points to a long-term change in our climate, which is happening at an unusual rate.
Now turning to Pakistan, where at least 121 people have been killed in the northwestern part of the country following days of heavy rain and landslides.
An emergency operation's been launched
to reach thousands of people stranded by floods and landslides.
Guangxi, China experienced freaky, abnormally large hail, where the hail falling from the sky was the size of chicken eggs. The storm apparently came out of nowhere on Saturday afternoon.
Chaos in Arizona when 20,000 bees sent worshippers running through the streets, desperately swatting away an attacking swarm outside of this Phoenix mosque. An absolutely terrifying ordeal for these people. Many of them were in a mosque when the bees suddenly flew inside and started stinging.
They say right around 3 o'clock is when bees suddenly just started swarming all over the place at a mosque.
Officials confirming at least 15 people were stung during the attack. The swarm was so big, roads in the area had to be shut down. Then just minutes later, more bees swarming a few miles south of the first attack.
Chile's government has temporarily banned the consumption of sardines in the south of the country after millions of dead fish turned up floating along the shores of the Cailo River. Experts are still investigating the cause of death and any possible risk to human health.
To northern Texas now, where they've been pummeled by massive hailstorm.
There is widespread damage across parts of the south. Hail bigger than a fist.
Baseball-sized softball.
Giant hail exploded through the windows. The images we see there look biblical.
I told my husband, I said, oh my God, there's no way she could have survived this hail. It was so huge.
The back window just completely shattered through. It was the scariest thing I've ever been through.
Almost 150 homes battered by the larger than normal hail. These storms had unusually strong updrafts.
What was most surprising was just how long the large hail fell, relentlessly pounding their homes and cars.
On Monday afternoon, the sinkhole is formed in the middle of a Madera, California street. The void grew from a relatively small crack to a gaping chasm. Authorities estimate the sinkhole is upwards of 20 feet deep.
We're witnessing end-time events. Everything is converging. We're witnessing prophecy as it unfolds, and there's a lot that's taking place. To be here today, to witness the fulfillment of the Word of God.
Flash floods in Saudi Arabia have taken people by surprise. 18 people have been killed during heavy rains and floods across the country. Unprecedented heavy downpours struck the mostly dry country this week.
The floods have washed away cars and blocked roads. 126 cities have been affected by the floods. Nearly 2,100 people have been evacuated, while some 300 homes are underwater.
Environmentalists are calling attention to what's happening in Greenland. Never seen this. Southerly winds have produced record high temperatures at 41 degrees above normal. This is an early season heat wave causing a rapid melting of the ice. How rare is this?
This is epic. It's 1 month before we've ever seen the melt. 12% of the land glaciers are now melting.
We're seeing the weather patterns very severe in some strange parts of the country. Pretty abnormal weather going on. This obviously happening globally.
The Arctic's never seen these temperatures in modern times.
And you're saying that we just haven't seen this in our lifetime. This is really abnormal stuff.
We've not seen this kind of heat, and we've never seen this kind of heat this early. It's 1 month in advance of any of the former ice melts. This is epic because also it has the strong probability of disrupting the North Atlantic jet stream, which carries the heat from the equator up into Europe.
Scientists say melting ice sheets, especially in Greenland, are changing the distribution of weight on Earth, and because of this, the wobble, which is called polar motion, has changed course.
Jesus said, and there will be great earthquakes, and in various places, the closer we get to his return, they will become more frequent and more intense, like birth pains. More frequent, more intense. More frequent earthquakes, more intense.
3 major earthquakes have rattled the Pacific region in 4 days. Now scientists say they are worried that the unusual pattern could mean another big one is in our future.
Breaking news, a nation in crisis.
Southwestern Japan has been hit by 2 major earthquakes.
Twin earthquakes hitting less than 28 hours apart, rattling homes and knocking down buildings.
Entire hillsides were torn apart. Japanese emergency officials say multiple people were killed, many hundreds wounded.
The death toll expected to rise. And another ominous sign tonight, one of Japan's most active volcanoes erupting.
Breaking news, another large and deadly earthquake.
A 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck the central coast of Ecuador Saturday.
The strongest earthquake to hit Ecuador in a century.
At least 587 people were killed, more than 8,000 were injured, and close to 2,000 buildings were damaged.
One town almost completely wiped out.
Hundreds more are buried under buildings.
The quake follows a series of others in the Pacific and continues to shake the ground with more than 230 aftershocks. These recent seismic events have scientists wondering whether such an unusual pattern means another big one is imminent.
An unprecedented season without rains has left huge swatches of land in eastern Ethiopia bone dry and millions of people starving. Much of their livestock, which they depend on, has been wiped out. In some areas, people have lost up to 90% of their animals.
Here's your best available video. This is Moon Field in Lynchburg. Whoa, softball game between Lynchburg and Bridgewater. What's that weather, man? You ever see one of those? Man, I don't know. Pictures, it's like, yeah, it's just gonna go by. I think everybody just hung out and didn't get freaked out. What would you do? That's some kind of hell spawn, man. What a look, and then it just evaporates. Oh, heck, no, not me, Jack. Does that really happen?
We're going to move on now to Houston, America's 4th largest city, overwhelmed by historic flooding.
After torrential rain forced the city to essentially shut down.
Record-breaking rainfall in the region has killed 5 people, displaced thousands, and left 9 counties under a state of emergency, making it one of the rainiest single days in history.
And in some areas, the water's still rising.
Tonight, the nation's 4th largest city still swamped by what scientists are calling a 1 in 500-year flood. 240 billion gallons of water falling in 24 hours has even animals struggling to survive.
Hundreds of strong aftershocks have occurred in southern Japan since last Thursday's large earthquake. Dozens have registered at least 4 on Japan's intensity scale, enough to cause buildings to shake.
More than 160 people have died after weeks of oppressive heat in southern and eastern India.
Much of India is now grappling with an intense heat wave.
Temperatures have hit as high as 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Drought conditions in India are currently affecting more than 300 million people in the country, killing thousands of farm animals and damaging crops.
Australia's Great Barrier Reef has the most severe bleaching in its history. 95% is white and yellow. Scientists say unless the World Heritage Site gets a break in the weather conditions within weeks, coral areas are unlikely to survive.
It's 622 miles. 520 reefs have been examined. Only 4 are unaffected. It's stunning.
There's no Savior in hell. There's no Bible in hell. There's no blood in hell. There's no altars in hell. There's no forgiveness in hell. Whatever goes to hell stays in hell. It's permanent. It's settled. It's settled. It's over with. That's why Jesus came 2,000 years ago. That's why he died at the cross at Calvary. He didn't die to make you rich. He didn't die because of who you are. He didn't die to create this hellhole you know about. He died to keep you out of hell. That's why he went to the cross. That's why it's so horrible. That's why it took the precious blood of the Lord Jesus Christ. That's why the Bible said God made him to be sin for us who knew no sin. That's why Calvary was so horrendous, because he would keep you out of hell. There's only one name on the face of this earth that can keep you out of hell. It's not Baptist, it's not Methodist, it's not Presbyterian, it's not Catholic, it's not Jew. There's just one name that can keep you out of hell, and it's the name of Jesus. Folks use that name day in and day out. They use the word hell day in and day out. They become desensitized to it. It has no meaning anymore. It has no punch to it. It doesn't grab the soul and the spirit. And that, my friend, was born in hell itself. Satan created that. You become so familiar with the word that it's just part of the average language of people who walk to and fro on the street. But hell is still existing. Nothing has stopped it. It burns to the lowest hell. That Bible says in Hebrews chapter number 12 and verse 29, our God is a consuming fire. There's holiness about God. If you could go into the presence of God unsaved, He would literally annihilate you. You'd rather be in hell in a heartbeat than to come before a holy God. Thrice holy, 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 holy. Dare walk into the presence of God without the blood covering your soul. You'd scream for hell. You'd beg for hell. You'd cry for hell. And yet I firmly believe hell burns because of the holiness of God. That's what hell is about. It's about a place that you go to without God. Somebody said hell is separation from God. Who told you that? Where's that in the Bible? Find it from Genesis to Revelation. Well, I heard the greatest evangelist say that. It made a difference what he said. What does the Bible say? He'll be dead and gone, and another generation will come on. Then another generation will come on. Then another generation will come on. What does the Bible say? We're judged by the book, my friend. What does the Bible say? Well, preacher, I want to tell you the truth. I've never read it. That's the truth. Most Christians haven't read it. They've never read it through from Genesis to Revelation. The sad state is that in the church today, most people are as ignorant of the Bible as they can be. That's why they can be tossed from one church to the next church, one doctrine to the next doctrine. It's because we are such a flim-flam bunch, because we don't know anything about God or His Word. It's a sad commentary. Well, preacher, I just don't believe all that. Oh, you don't, do you? Well, what do you base it on, dear friend? What do you base the fact that you don't believe in hell? What do you base it on? Well, I just don't believe God's like that. What do you know about God? What God you talking about? You ever bothered to read His Word? You ever bothered to read the Word of the God that you say you know about? What did He say in His Word? He said, my spirit shall not always strive with man. He brought a flood upon this earth one time. Thousands of years ago, the layers upon planet Earth proved that flood was universal. From one end of the globe to the other, water covered this earth. Water was all over the planet. You find it everywhere if you want to look. It's there. He destroyed it one time with water, never to do it again, but next time He's coming with fire. The Lord Jesus Christ said the elements are going to melt with fervent heat. Where's that at in the Bible? It's in the Bible, friend. Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us. We live in a generation that's literally brainwashed. I've never seen anything like it in my life. This generation will embrace anything. They'll believe anything, embrace anything. This is the most relativistic bunch that ever lived on the face of the earth. And they marvel at how they're in your face with it. In your face constantly, and it's gotten to the point where everybody's desensitized. Nobody's convicted of anything anymore. Murderers day in and day out. Murderers in this town right now would blow your brains out for enough money for fix-it crack cocaine. It's never crossed their murdering mind that they're going to burn in hell. They've never thought the fact that they're going to burn one day in hell. We've gotten to the point now where it's just simply passé. It doesn't matter anymore. There's no meaning to anything. Whatever you feel good about doing, do it. You live in an insane society, for there is no fear of God in their eyes. Nobody fears God anymore. Hell is not full. Hell is full of multi-millionaires and multi-billionaires. There are old men in this world in their 80s and their 90s that are so rich they could buy and sell Knoxville, Tennessee. My friend, they're going to die and go to hell. There are politicians running this world right now that one day they'll step down from the kings and the queens and the presidents and the parliamentarians, and they'll go to hell one day. Hell is full of kings. Hell is full of queens. Some of the biggest and greatest that's ever lived among men are in hell right now. Hell knows no identity. It is no respecter of persons. The young and the old go to hell. The rich and the poor go to hell. The black and the white and the red and the yellow go to hell. Hell knows no distinctions. Baptists go to hell, Methodists go to hell, Presbyterians go to hell, Catholics go to hell, Episcopalians go to hell, Russians go to hell, Jews go to hell, Americans go to hell, Englishmen go to hell, Portuguese go to hell, Africans go to hell. Without Jesus Christ, there is no way out of hell. Where is hell, preacher? Hell is a place at the end of your life. That's where it is. That's at the end of your life. And here's the saddest thing about hell: when you get there, it's too late. Nothing can be done for you. You're going to hell, and when you die, it's too late. The rich man said, let me go back. Let me go back and warn my brethren. Oh, Abraham, let me go. This place of torment, I've got to warn them. He said, they've got Moses and the prophets. If they hear not Moses and the prophet, they hear not one that comes back from the dead. He said, oh, Abraham, would you just please take Lazarus and just send him here with a drop on his finger to drop it in my tongue, lest I be torn. Oh, just a little drop. Oh, Lazarus, just a drop.
You wander through the willows in the forest you have found, trying to hide your footprints in the ground. It's not so wise if you try to run. It's not so wise. You know I've won. You know I've won. And you'll smile on your knees. The hunter becomes the hunter becomes the hunted. The hunter becomes the hunted. The hunter trying to hide your footprints in the ground. It's not so wise if you try to run. It's not so